Start the recording. Welcome back, guys. As usual, we're playing Star Trek Adventures, not Star Wars RPG. Very distinct difference. I'm hoping that this session will be much more open and a lot less rushed than the last one. Of course, now that I've said something, Discord will crash and, bad things will happen. The only announcement that I have is that next week we might be off. But we'll talk more about that, players to GM after the session. So unless anyone has any things of note that they'd like to bring up, I think we're ready for the captain's log.
All right. Captain's log, stardate 54819.4. As ordered, the Ophion has returned to Deep Space Nine, where we are to rendezvous with a Federation construction convoy and escort it back to the Sabine Expanse. Our discovery of the Takan Stellar Transporter has generated quite the excitement back at Starfleet Command, and they have decided that there is now a need to further bolster our presence in the area with a construction of a starbase and listening posts. I am concerned that the Romulans may view this as a threat and respond in kind. But the scientific advancements that could be learned from this discovery are probably worth the risk. Thankfully, we are not alone in the escort duty. The USS Alexandra and the USS Kodiak will be meeting us here, and together we should hopefully present enough strength to deter any Romulan interference. I am more concerned with the regular monthly supply convoys that will be needed, though. The corridor of the Sabine Expanse is very narrow, and nothing can hide in there.
Okay. So, as the captain has said, the Ophion is currently at DS9, docked at Upper Pylon 3, and more or less you guys have shore leave for whatever time is left between now and when the convoy gets here. So we're going to start with Quarks. So, imagine Quarks as it always has been. And Captain, you happen to be at the bar at the moment, and Morn is talking your ear off. Like, if you have to hear him say something about his sister one more time, you might just, lose it, kind of a thing. But thankfully, Quark picks up on this, and he kind of shuffles on over and says, "Morn, leave the poor man alone." And then, here, Captain, let me pour you a drink. And Quark kind of moves over. That'll give you an excuse to kind of move away from Morn. And Quark begins pouring you a fresh refill of whatever drink that you might have. And he says, "So tell me, Captain, are the rumors true?"
There's always rumors going around in space. Which ones in particular are you referring to?
Well, I hear from a friend, of course, that there might be a convoy coming through the area.
As he's continuing to pour, I'm just going to quickly say, so this drink is this drink on the, that depends if this drink's on the house or not.
Well, of course.
Yeah, just it's my understanding it's a Federation, Federation disaster relief convoy that's heading into Cardassia.
Huh. Makes me wonder what you're going to do with all those industrial replicators, but, I'm just a simple bartender.
Well, the Cardassians are rebuilding slowly, but industrial-sized replicators will help their society rebuild far faster than if they were left to fend for themselves, and they should be on friendly terms with us, which will do us a lot, which will do us great favor. More friends against the Romulans is always a bonus.
Oh, speaking of the Romulans, and he leans in a little bit, I hear that your ship might be responsible for why we haven't seen them around recently.
I just, give him a subtle nod and a wink and a smile and just tell him, well, the Ophion does pack quite the punch. And the Romulans did take a heavy pounding during the last stage of the Dominion War. It's my understanding that Starfleet's fleet rebuilding efforts are far further along than the Romulans are.
That's what happens when you trade with us Ferengi. We get you all the raw materials you need.
Yeah, and it only costs us a few extra strips of latinum.
Ah, but you get it on time. Sometimes ahead of time, even, don't you?
Oh, there's one of those Ferengi rules of acquisition, something about honor the agreement, if not the terms.
Ah, I think that's like Rule 46, but details.
Mm.
And he kind of leans back to his normal position and finally says, "One other thing, Captain. There's another rumor going around that your ship might be making its own brew. Any truth to that?"
I would not. As captain of the ship, I should know everything that's going on. And if someone's making brew and not sharing it with me, well, I'm going to have to pinch their lobes if you catch my drift.
Oh, as would I in this position, but I simply ask because if that's the case, I know of quite a few interested buyers and patrons of this very bar that would be interested in sampling something from the Sabine Expanse.
Well, I will certainly inquire, and if the brewer wishes to make a deal, then that's up to them.
Of course, of course. And it's at this point I'm going to open up the floor for the rest of my players here. You can pretty much do mostly anything you'd like, either on DS9 or the Ophion itself. And basically, this is just an open time for RP. We'll go pretty much until you guys need a push, kind of a thing. So, did anyone have any things they wanted to maybe address or do before the convoy shows up?
Mm,
Um, I'm
bef-
gonna set it up with Lieutenant Locke. I'm gonna ask him to increase uh, subspace scans for any fluctuations when the convoy gets here and as we take off back for the Sabine Expanse.
Okay. Yep. I will certainly, if you want me at my post during, should it be shore leave, I will of course do so and scan as needed.
It is not that important, but once we depart with the convoy, I would prefer if these scans increased in intensity.
Right. So before I go on shore leave, then I'll make sure the sensors have done a full calibration and kind of like they had that kind of the slower of the update maintenance, just so everything is in peak condition before you go.
Okay.
mhm.
Start that and go off and do shore leave.
Okay. I'd say that your diagnostic of the sensors reveals that everything seems to be fine except for one very small gap in the port sensor array of the tertiary hull.
I grab a commissioned officer and go off to check that myself, I guess.
Okay.
Realign it, make sure it's all working properly.
Okay. And it's fairly trivial for you to do it, and this will be just a momentum generator in case you guys need it. It'll be a control plus engineering at a difficulty 0.
It's engineering, no applicable focus.
Okay. So you get, they updated how the sheet rolls. That's interesting. So yeah, you get 2 momentum. Fixing the problem with the sensor array is fairly trivial, even for you not having like an extensive engineering background. And sure enough, when you're finished, you still have ample time for shore leave.
Excellent. So,
Did you want to go or looks like you can?
nope, I'll wait for.
I'm gonna ask the computer. Computer, locate the captain.
The captain is currently not aboard the captain is not currently aboard the Ophion.
then I'll say, computer, alert me when the captain comes back aboard.
Okay. It just sort of gives the affirmative chime.
And then I'll make my way down to the med bay to talk to Commander Beckett.
Okay. So, out of curiosity, Commander Beckett, are you doing anything in particular before he walks in?
Not out of the ordinary. I would have a small container that has a few bottles in it to pay my debt. But other than that, no.
Okay. So yeah, Panek, you walk into the main sick bay and you find Commander Beckett and his lovely assistant.
I'll walk up to them and then, Commander Beckett, Ensign Vara.
XO?
Tell me how our recent patient is doing. What is he? Something Thomas?
Lieutenant Thomas.
Lieutenant Thomas?
Right, our tunnel rat. He's doing fine now, especially now that he's out of the confined spaces. He apparently doesn't want to be returned.
I do not believe that is up to him, rather Starfleet Command.
True, but still, I entered it in my log. But other than that, physically, he's perfectly fine. Mentally, maybe he could use a session or two with our counselor, but physically, there's nothing wrong with him.
You would consider him not a flight risk?
Well,
DS9 has a lot of tunnels, Commander.
this is true. I would recommend that he be, if we're not turning him over to DS9 to be put in their brig for someone else to pick up, I'd say he should be confined to quarters.
Very well, thank you, Commander. And then I'll welcome salute them and then leave.
Okay. So actually, right before you leave, Ensign Vara takes the initiative and says, she taps her comm badge and says, "Computer, locate Engineer Thomas, please." And the computer says, "Engineer Thomas is not aboard the Ophion."
Pinnock stops with 1 foot almost on the other side of the door, and he turns around and says, "I see we have struck out this time."
Sounds like it.
And then he'll turn and leave again, and then he'll head up to the bridge to see if they can do first he'll calm the captain and says, "Captain," as he makes his way to the bridge, "we seem to have lost Lieutenant Thomas. Should I contact DS9 security?"
I was actually on my way to see their counselor and talk with Captain Kira. I'll have that meeting and I'll inform them of the situation, and then I will be back and we can figure out precisely what to do with him.
Very well, sir. And then I'll connect out and then head to the bridge and order a scan of the station to see if we can identify where Thomas is.
Okay. So obviously, the station's internal sensors would probably do a better job of this. You get a rough understanding of how many life signs are aboard the station and where they might be, but it's not like Lieutenant Thomas's life sign in particular would stand out. It's one of those things where you might maybe see a life form in a Jeffries tube or a conduit, but that could be a normal engineering detail. You really don't know.
We should have put a tracker on him like we suggested.
I'm going to calm back down to Beckett. Bridge to Commander Beckett.
Beckett here.
Was there anything in his recent med scan that could help us narrow our search for Lieutenant Thomas? Any anomalies we should look out for, or things of that nature?
Out of character, I don't remember off the top of my head.
So out of character, there might not be any, but let's do a roll. Let's see what we can come up with. Let's do an insight plus medicine, and we'll call this a difficulty 2.
Alrighty. Normal 2d20, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. For some reason, when I went to do the roll, it auto starts at 1d20 now. And no applicable focus. Because humans don't count for xenobiology.
So it looks like 1 success. Okay. So yeah, you're thinking on it. You maybe even go so far as to pull up the recent scan on one of your consoles, and yeah, there's not really anything in particular that would be able to be used to single him out.
Okay. Exo, unfortunately for what you're asking, he is as plain of a human as possible.
I see. Thank you, Commander. Bridge out, and then I'll just kind of stay on the bridge and as everyone's on doing their thing, and just keep an eye out. Alert the bridge staff to keep an eye to keep an eye on station status.
Gotcha. Okay. Locke, I believe you might have had something as well.
I'm gonna go around and just try to get some odds and ends and sods for like tinkering and building, kind of customizing Starfleet equipment. So wander around the promenade and the various engineering sections, just see what I can pick up.
Okay.
So I can do my Q thing.
So as you are walking around the promenade, and I'm 99% sure Garrick's here, but if he's not in real canon, he is now. So as you walk around, Garrick, which you all might be familiar with from the show, kind of doesn't waylay you, but kind of calls out to you and says, Lieutenant, that uniform's looking a little bit rusty. Maybe I could make you a nicely tailored one so that it's not so stiff in the shoulders.
Thank you for your offer, but I think my current one is sufficient and up to Starfleet code. And
I insist. You must come into my shop for measurements.
All right. I suppose I have put on a few pounds that might need to be loosened. And I follow him.
Okay. So, sure enough, he does begin taking your measurements. And as he does, he goes on to say, so I hear that there might be a new contingent of ships being brought here. If it were me, I personally would maybe double that amount, but what do I know? I'm just a simple tailor.
Oh, you've double it from what?
Oh, well, I obviously don't know how many ships might be coming in, but it just seems that with everything that's going on in the recent area, that maybe the Federation and Starfleet in particular need to step up their game a little bit.
Well, the reconstruction of Cardassia is a fairly monumental task. I mean, your population was decimated by the founders, unless you're referring to something else that I'm unaware of.
Oh, I'm sure I don't mean anything in particular. And if you haven't already gotten the hint, he's trying to imply something, but what he might be implying is hard to tell with Garrick.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'm sure you hear many more people coming through your shop than we get out on the Ophion. Have you heard any interesting rumors that I should know about?
Nothing. Sort of nothing that I think would be worth sharing. Well, no. Perhaps there is this one thing.
Oh, gossip. Give me some gossip to share about the ship. So give me a long voyage. There's nothing new to talk about.
You didn't hear this from me, but a passing Romulan delegation mentioned that they might be looking into taking more of the Cardassian space. Now, of course, I can imagine what my comrades would say back in the Empire, but not exactly in a position to refute their claim if they decide to expand a bit more.
That's certainly interesting gossip. Oh, but probably just idle talk and worrying, of course.
Oh, more than likely. And then he finishes measuring you, and he says, "Well, if you have a few more minutes, I can do the tailors right here and now."
Sounds lovely. Yes. So
Okay. So he comes back with, I forget what the device is actually called, but he comes back with one of the tailoring devices that we see him using in the show. And he just kind of passes it over your shoulders. And sure enough, your uniform seems to fit a lot better.
expert use of the fabric enhancer,
Ah, well, it's what I do.
the tailoring pattern enhancer.
But yeah, so once Garrick's done and he steps back, he says, "Yes, well, that's probably about all I can do for you at the time, or for the moment, unless you would prefer to, I don't know, get a fresh pair of pants or something of that nature."
I, I believe I am good. Thank you for fixing things up. My shoulders feel a little less tight around there.
Ah, yes,
Yeah,
and remember what we talked about.
Yes, excellent gossip. I'll be sure to share that next time we're just chatting around the dock.
He kind of raises an eyebrow, but doesn't really say anything. But yeah, so kind of as a wrap up before we move on to someone else, was there any particular odd and end that you were looking for, or just kind of a general thing?
Just general thing, so that way when I need something, there's a reason for it to be having kind of a self-stealing stem bolt or a pile of assorted junk.
I
I'm
gotcha.
going
I gotcha.
trolling through the garage sales.
Okay. I believe the captain, you were going to head to see Esri Dax, because I think Esri is still on the station at this point.
Is that what I'd like? Well, considering we talked about 3 weeks ago, I hope that she hasn't transferred off yet.
Yeah, it's one of those things where beta canon isn't 100% when they're on and off station, so we'll just say that she's still there.
Okay.
So yeah, you're able to find Esri no problem, and you happen to find her in the Replimat having lunch, and she just kind of looks up and says, "Ah, Captain Skull, you're back. Welcome. Have a seat, I guess."
Why, thank you. I must apologize. I'm here more for official business now than just, Trill symbiote business.
Okay.
So, when I first sought you out, I was going to seek your advice as a counselor for a second opinion of a troubled crew member that we literally stumbled upon. However, there's the strong possibility that crew member might be your problem now, because he seems to have stolen himself off our ship and is most likely running the station now.
Her face kind of hardens into a look of concern, and she says, "Well, what can you tell me about this person?"
He is an engineer from from the Utopia Planitia who was assigned to assist in constructing the Ophion. However, he seems to suffer from severe agoraphobia, fear of people. He literally lived in our ducts and crawl spaces and hideaway areas on our ship for 3 weeks, believing that we had been taken over by Romulans. So not only is he agoraphobic, he suffers from delusions. Our local counselor was attempting to treat him, and if he could be treated, we would have made him an engineer on our ship, but it seems that he may be too far gone and is now probably hiding away on some duct or crawl space on Deep Space Nine.
Oh, well, that's troubling. We have a lot of those.
So I've
have
been
you told Captain Kira about this?
No, I was only made aware of this development roughly 10 minutes ago. If we can meet with Captain Kira and your current head of security, I would be more than happy to share whatever information I have on him.
Well, she kind of looks down at her plate and kind of shrugs and just kind of picks it up and takes it over to the replicator for it to be reused, kind of a thing. And she says, "We can go now. My schedule's clear for the moment, and this is probably the sort of thing we should handle before it gets too out of control."
Agreed, and I apologize for ruining your.
Nah, it's fine. So at this point, you are taken up to ops, and you are easily able to meet with Captain Kira. And
while we're en route, I'm going to call the Ophion and ask for Counselor Jisa to transport to my location,
okay,
since she has the most experience with this guy.
okay. So Jisa will meet you in the ops.
Good show.
All right. So, all of you, Captain Kira, Skull, Esri, Jisa, and the as of yet unnamed person in charge of station security, kind of all pile into Kira's office. Kira just kind of sighs as you tell her the general gist of what's going on. And, is it Rolaren?
I'm on memory beta now, and it's giving Rolaren as an option.
Okay.
Yeah, Rolaren is chief of security right now, and eventually becomes Blackmer, I think.
Okay, let's go with Rolaren then. As you relay the basic information of what's going on, basically what you just told Esri, Kira just kind of sighs and begins rubbing her temples and says, Lauren, do you by chance have any security teams about at the moment? And Ro just kind of says, I have quite a few, yes. I'm assuming you want me to. And Kira just kind of cuts her off and says, yes, I want this man found as soon as possible.
The Ophion will, because this is partially our fault, probably completely our fault, the Ophion will assist as needed. Please coordinate with our chief of security.
Of course, Ro says, and Kira adds, so I just maybe I didn't hear this correctly. You had a potentially dangerous individual not locked up in a brig?
We don't believe that he's dangerous. He's unhinged, and was cooperating quite well with our counselor. We had no issues with him confined to quarters for the 2 or 3 weeks that we've had him under our care. We had thought that he was making some improvement, but as soon as he saw a bigger set of hidey holes, he just must have split. And we don't believe him to be a threat, at least not a credible one. He's very smart, he seems peaceful, and doesn't seem to know how to actually work a phaser.
Small blessings, I guess. And Kira turns to Counselor Jisa and says, you've worked with him the most. Where do you think he'll go? Jisa kind of tilts her head to the side and thinks and says, if I had to guess, probably the most remote Jeffrey's tube or conduit in the station. One that normally doesn't get a whole lot of foot traffic. And Kira just starts to look at Ro and Ro says, I'm already on it, ma'am. And, unless there's anything else that you wanted to bring up with the captain, you all will kind of break and go your separate ways at this point.
Yeah, I think I've brought enough bad news to her doorstep today.
Okay. So with that all out of the way, any other loose ends and or tasks that you guys wanted to get out of the way?
I do want to take some bottles of our brew back down to Corks.
Okay.
To pay the debt to Nog.
Okay. So yeah.
What's the name of our brew?
That was my question.
This first run, I think we're gonna call it the
Just medical
Sabine
grade.
Lager.
If you could spell that out so I have it correctly in my notes.
Well, whatever the Sabine Expanse, however you spell that part of Sabine,
Okay.
and then just Lager, which I
Okay.
believe is Lager.
Okay. I thought that's how it was, but I wanted to be sure. The Sabine Lager. All right. Cool. So yeah, you head down to Quark's with these bottles in tow, and as you walk inside, Quark kind of looks up from what he's doing, and he says, Commander, I literally just asked your captain this an hour ago, and here you are already."
Yeah, I had some things to attend to on the Ophion before I could leave the ship, but I always pay my debts, and I made a promise to your nephew that if he helped me out with something, that I would bring some bottles of our first run of brew to you and to him.
Well, I'd be happy to take them. And as soon as he's got them stationed behind the bar, he kind of does one of those announcement type things to the entire bar. And he says, "Attention, everyone. We now have the illustrious Sabine Lager available. Supplies are limited, though, so glasses will begin at a premium and very reasonable 5 strips of latinum."
Well, seeing as how this first run was a repayment, I won't be asking for my cut of that 5 strips.
So even without needing to, bat an eyelash or an eye, he pulls out a pad and kind of offers it to you. And he says, "Oh, don't worry, I've already brought up the agreement." And as you look at the pad, it is a very typical Ferengi contract, and the current balance of profits is 25 to you and 75 to Quark.
I'll read over it, scratch my chin, and I don't know if I really like these numbers.
Well, I think they're fair. I mean, after all you do is brew it. I have to sell it.
Let's get it closer to, let's say, 50-50.
Thinks for a moment and says, 35, 65, and not a strip of latinum more.
I can agree to those terms. I'll take 65 and 35 is yours.
Oh, no. It would be very much the reverse.
Well, I guess I can accept 65-35 as long as I have, what's the word for it? Proper shelf exposure.
I think that can be arranged. And you see him pull back out the bottles and place them very prominently on his shelf behind him.
And as he does that, I'll give the thumbprint or whatever it is to sign. Well, I'll make the adjustments to the contract, and then I'll give my thumbprint.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, you now have a contract for 35% of all profits.
Excellent.
I'll note that myself.
And then I will also, knowing that there's a chance that it wouldn't make it to Nog, before we head out, I'll run a bottle up to Nog to make sure that he actually gets one.
Okay.
Because, well, it's Quark.
Right. Okay. I think you'll find Nog in Ops, if anywhere on the station. So you come up into Ops, and you probably actually step into Ops about the same time that the captain is leaving. So you kind of run into each other like halfway there. And Captain, you see that Commander Beckett is carrying around what appears to be a bottle of liquor.
Commander,
Captain.
I don't know station regulations well, but I'm not entirely certain that alcohol is permitted in ops.
I'll look down at the bottle and look back up to him. But you see, it's not alcohol, it's a gift.
I shrug and go, well, not my station, not my rules. I'm sure you know what you're doing, but if you get disciplined by the captain here, that's on you.
Aye, sir. And I'll walk past him into the, into ops.
Okay.
And I'll head down the turbolift and head back to the Ophion.
Okay. So yeah, you'll find Nog at his station. He'll kind of look at you as you approach, and he says, Commander, what is it that I can do for you?
Well, as I maybe about 10 minutes ago told your uncle, I always pay my debts. And I'll set the bottle on his duty station. And this is a bottle from the first run. I gave some to your uncle, but I figured, knowing your uncle, he wouldn't give it to you. So I wanted to make sure that one got brought to you.
Ah, you thought right. I appreciate you bringing this to me directly. I will look forward to sampling it when I am off duty.
Excellent. And thanks again for your help.
Oh, no trouble at all. And it's actually about this point that the his console begins beeping, as does Lieutenant Shatsu's back on the Ophion, and they both say almost at the same time, so that everyone, every player character would be made aware of it in one way or another. Sir, it appears that the convoy we've been waiting for is dropping out of orbit. And sure enough, the convoy you have all been waiting for drops out of warp and begins to head towards DS9 at impulse. Escorting the 7 transports is the USS Alexandra and the USS Kodiak. Respectively, they are a Sovereign class and a Steamrunner class. They both move into a holding pattern about the station, while some of the transports begin to dock with DS9 and work through some last-minute type matters, and basically making sure that they're ship-shape for the trip to the Sabine Expanse.
Is the captain's back aboard the bridge, right?
At this point, yeah, the captain would probably be walking onto the bridge.
Yeah, so by now you've Pinnex obviously got the alert that the captain's back on ship.
I say captain on the bridge to the bridge staff.
Okay.
What have I told you about that standing order? Don't do it again.
Apologize, old habits, sir.
Well, I suppose if that's the worst habit you've picked up in your years of service, it's a pretty good one to have. Anyways, I see our friends have arrived. Raise the captains of the vessels if you're able.
Connect nods and then motions to. Is Lieutenant Locke back at his station?
He is, but if I remember the bridge layout correctly, Panek, it's actually your station which does communications.
Oh yeah, but didn't he ask me if he could take that over since he was
when you were in command? But
oh, okay. Then I'll hail them.
Okay. So actually, right before you press the button to hail them, you get a hail from the Alexandra.
Fair enough. On screen.
Okay.
I put it on screen.
So on screen appears the Andorian captain as a Saul. Phonetically, I'll copy paste it so that it doesn't get too confusing. But he looks, for an Andorian, he looks to be in rather good spirits, and he even sounds it when he says, Captain Skull, I was wondering when we'd be able to meet face to face, as it were. If you're not doing anything this evening, I would like to extend a invitation to yourself and any of your senior staff to join us for dinner. Our Vulcan counterpart on the Kodiak, Captain Valal, will be in attendance already.
Captain Azasal, I welcome you to Deep Space Nine. I trust that the journey has so far been uneventful.
Oh, indeed. But I think we both know that the really interesting part of this convoy duty will occur as we press towards the Sabine Expanse.
Well, of course, Klingons on one side, Romulans on the other, Cardassians on the fringe. What could possibly go wrong?
You see him kind of smile in that, like, anticipatory Andorian way, and even his antennas kind of angle a little bit.
Myself and my crew would be happy to join you aboard the Alexandra. Truth be told, I've never actually set foot on a Sovereign-class starship. I look forward to seeing it in all its glory.
We'll roll out the welcome mat for you.
Fantastic.
And then he'll nod his head, and the comm will cut. Panek, since you are at the comms, you're going to get a very short, basic text message from the Alexandra that the dinner will take place in exactly 4 hours' time.
I'm going to message back to their comm officer to ask how long we'll be keeping station.
The current estimate is a... Let's share my notes somewhere. There it is. It is going to be at least a 24-hour layover at DS9. So not quite a full 26-hour day that the station runs on. Or not 26-hour system that they run on, but pretty close.
I'll mark down in my report to alert department heads of this increase in time.
Okay.
And I'm just going to look over at Mr. Panek and just say, an Andorian captain and a Vulcan captain together in one room. Admiral Archer would be very pleased.
I believe so as well.
He was the captain of the Columbia?
Close. He was the captain of the Enterprise NX-01, if my history is accurate.
Early Federation history, not my strong suit.
You are correct, Captain.
Well, I did live a lot of Federation history. Well, the thing inside me did. Anyways, 4 hours. Let's make... Lieutenant Shatsu, please make sure that the station has all the assistance that it needs in finding our missing lieutenant.
We're missing a lieutenant?
Oh yes. Lieutenant Thomas has gone missing. Probably onto Deep Space Nine. We should probably also alert the Alexandra and the Kodiak of his presence, just in case he decides to sneak on board one of their vessels. And for that matter, we should probably make the entire convoy aware.
He was under the warp reactor for quite some time. He might have picked up quite a bit of a delta radiation. So if they focus their scans on that, they might be able to pick him up a little easier.
Shatsu kind of nods and begins to relay this information to every relevant party.
Oh, the headaches one human can give us.
Yep.
And when he's found, let's see if we can't keep him on the station to transfer back to Starfleet Medical. He needs all the help he can get, and he will not find it on board one of our ships heading into the middle of nowhere.
So not probably 2 minutes later, Shatsu kind of smiles and says, "Got him. He's in Upper Pylon 2. And she presses a button and says, Captain Kira, we've found our man. Send a team to X location in Upper Pylon 2. You're looking for delta radiation. And of course, Captain Kira just kind of thanks Lieutenant Shatsu and otherwise just kind of cuts the comm.
Good insight, Mr. Locke. Thank you for the information. You saved us all a great deal of headaches.
Should we put a micro transmitter in them this time? They sell subdermal thing we can pick up.
If he was on board, if he was to stay on board our ship, it would certainly be something that I would argue for. But if he is to be transferred back to Starfleet Medical, he is now technically under the jurisdiction of Deep Space Nine.
Have we received orders from Starfleet Command in regard to Lieutenant Thomas, Captain?
Not to my knowledge. Just calling this a command decision.
Then I suggest that the lieutenant has shown sufficient cause for us to implant a dermal transceiver, at least for the duration of our stay at Deep Space Nine. With this being a port of call, he has many avenues to leave by.
I am in agreement. I'll send note to their Dr. Bashir to perform the surgery.
Okay. So Shatsu will go ahead and pick up that bit of information and relay it on. So out of character, just as a note, you are correct in that it's still going to be DS9's decision. You guys have just more or less said, hey, this would probably be a really good idea. So, after that's taken care of, Shatsu just kind of takes a look around the bridge and says, so, Captain, I'm curious, which of us will be in attendance at this dinner?
Well, considering that we're technically still on shore leave until the convoy moves out, I'm opening it to officers' discretion. I will be attending, obviously, and I expect Mr. Panek will join me. Other than that, it is not mandatory, but preferred. I hear they have a wonderful and large mess hall.
All right, oh dear. All right, so unfortunately it seems that the map I made for this isn't here anymore. So we're just going to still use the DS9 map, and I'll just put your guys' tokens over the Alexandra. So Captain Skull, Panek, and then officer's discretion. So who else would be going to this dinner?
Would I be invited, sir? Am I considered senior staff now?
Yes. Of course you are, Mr. Locke.
Not to be personal, is Ensign Vara coming? The nurse? I've been trying to avoid her. I don't want to. It's nothing.
Miss Vara, I would not believe counts as an ensign, and her place would probably be in sickbay.
Then I'd be happy to come.
Okay.
I just raise an eyebrow and just keep a smile to myself.
We're almost the only two Bolians on the ship, so people keep trying to pair us off, since Bolians don't have relations with other races often, for biological reasons.
Yeah, your business is your own, so long as it does not impact your duties.
Thank you, Captain.
Okay.
I was going to say, especially being the two other command staff, if you will, as second officer, I will stay aboard the ship.
Okay.
I will, as they say, man the big chair and keep it warm, and Ensign Vara can run sickbay, or go on leave if she wants.
I think she'll probably do the safe thing and just maintain sickbay for you.
Sounds good.
What's the name of the Vulcan captain?
It is Valal, and I will copy paste that as well. That is her name. But yeah, I think Shatsu would go to this. Yeah, let's have Shatsu go to this, and that'll leave Senior Chief Tin on the bridge with Commander Beckett. Okay. So before I skip ahead, did anyone want to do anything during this 4-hour time period, or should I just skip?
Panek, you can skip this, but he goes back to his quarters and meditates a little bit before the party.
Okay.
Yeah, Captain Skull is just going to retire to his ready room for the moment, catch up on paperwork, and do a bit of painting.
Painting? Okay. Out of curiosity, what style of painting are you going for?
I I think he's going to be an oil style artist. His current work was trying to capture the triple planet environment.
Okay. It's a very, very nice subject to tackle. Okay. I think that leaves Locke and Beckett. Anything you guys want to do?
I go back and try to practice a little bit of accordion smooth jazz until the person neighboring me bangs on the wall.
Well, actually, unlike Voyager, the sound dampening between the rooms is very good.
I'm so happy they removed those fluid conduits between the walls.
Oh yeah. So unless you crank up the proverbial amp to 11, they're not going to hear you.
As far as Beckett goes, I in these 4 hours I won't do anything. Maybe work or check on the stills, but other than that, yeah, I don't have anything pressing.
Okay. So we will skip ahead.
Oh yes, I would
go
also
ahead.
mandate anyone going over wear dress uniforms. We have a good impression to make with our fellow captains, after all.
Okay. The four of you, Skull, Panek, Locke, and Shatsu, will arrive in Transporter Room 1, all in dress uniform. And the Transporter Chief on duty will kind of do that hand raise across his console, and you all will beam over to the Alexandra. And looking around as you rematerialize in the Alexandra's transporter room, it's honestly not a whole lot different from what you've got on the Ophion. It's not until the door opens and in steps Captain Azasal steps in, that you see kind of past him that the corridors are much more accommodating and a lot more open than the ones you've got on the Ophion. And the Andorian captain is actually not in dress uniform, and he kind of looks at all of you in dress uniform and says, "I had intended this to be a more informal affair, but I'd say you all look rather nice."
Panek is not embarrassed by this.
I am slightly, then I shrug and get on with life.
I adjust my tunic and wish Garrick had adjusted this uniform as well.
I step forward and shake the captain's hand.
Okay, he definitely returns with a very firm handshake.
I had intended to make a good impression on our hosts, and it is usually better to overdress for these things than to come underdressed.
This must be a human thing.
I would hope not. I'm Trill. And I just point up my spots. I do know that we share a lot of outward similarities.
That was a joke, Captain.
Oh. Apologies. I'm wound up a little, as you can probably tell.
Well, hopefully you will find it within you to relax a bit during this dinner. But come. I'll lead you to the banquet hall. And unless any of you decide to go running off the corridor in the other direction for whatever reason, you all are led through the corridors of the Alexandra. And eventually, after a very brief turbolift ride, you arrive in what is essentially a conference room, or not a conference room, a lounge, about the size of 10 forward on the Enterprise D. But it has been repurposed to be a sort of open buffet and bar. So there are a wide variety of foods available on tables near the edge of the room. There are some chairs and some tables set up. And there's also a gentleman manning the bar that is handing out things like synthahol and other things of that nature. And Azahal, in particular, once you all are inside and you begin mingling, Azahal is going to make a point to bring over the Vulcan captain, which you've heard so much about. And Valal, to her credit, is actually kind of diminutive for a Vulcan. She's maybe about 5'5", and honestly, I think the first thought you might have looking at her is that a teenage Vulcan got dressed up for the occasion to look like a captain. And Azahal says, Captain Skull, Lieutenant Commander Panek, this is Captain Valal. And Valal nods her head very respectfully at Lieutenant Commander Panek and says, "It is a pleasure to meet you both."
It's my pleasure, Captain.
As is mine.
It is my understanding that you, Captain, and she looks at Skull, are to be in charge of the convoy now that the Ophion has joined it.
We have navigated the corridor twice already and have some experience, at least in the first few sectors of the Sabine Expanse. Command has fallen to me, of course, but I consider myself first among equals and will happily defer to anyone else's expertise should it be required.
I shall keep that in mind, though I find this convoy duty to be slightly illogical.
Illogical, how so?
Well, if this installation that we are to construct is of such importance, would it not be logical to send more ships besides just the Kodiak and the Alexandra?
Do you feel that this construction is to be inadequate, Captain?
I simply am concerned about the possible response from the Romulans.
Indeed, I have sent such a thing and meant to report to you, Captain, that I suggest we increase our security at the Iconian site.
To con site, but close enough.
We currently, the Aegis and the Connecticut are standing, have taken up blockade duty at the Takan site. However, I believe there would be only a day's travel away at high warp from the exit of the Sabine Passage, should we decide that further assistance is needed.
And if I may ask, Captain, what exactly are your orders when it comes to the Takan site?
Is this to Azasal or Valal?
Which one is the construction? I guess the construction crew is going to be on the transports, but
right.
Whoever I to Azazal, because he seems to be the one in charge. I mean, he's in a sovereign, you know.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So his little antenna kind of narrow a little bit, and he says, "Well, it is my understanding that the Alexandra and the Kodiak are to remain on station in the Icarus sector until at least the starbase is at least until the starbase is operational enough for a skeleton crew, and that we are also to alternate convoy protection duty as is warranted."
Oh, so they came up with a better name other than the Sabine Gamma 002, huh?
Indeed.
Yeah. Icarus seems both optimistic and a curse, if I recall the Greek fables.
And Valal kind of raises an eyebrows and says, "I am not familiar with this fable."
Something about someone flying too close to the sun and they got burned. It was a cautionary tale told to us in the Sciences track about the how proceeding with science with an abandonment to safety could end up causing more harm than good.
Well, I suppose we shall have to hope that there are no such matters that would occur in the Icarus sector. Though now that you have informed me of it, it is indeed rather ominous.
Yeah, that's Starfleet for you. We
It
can't
is-
go around. We can't go around calling every sector of space the happy sunshine zone, can we?
So Azasal kind of smirks, but Valal does not even twitch a single muscle of her face.
I'm a little too pleased with myself. I'm going to just, if you'll excuse me, captains, I require some wine.
Of course, of course. Locke, as you mingle, I'll say that you see a lot of humans, a lot of Vulcans. You also see a single Trill, a pair of Cations, and I guess someone that looks like a human, but they're, like there would be something about their dress style that would indicate that they would be Betazoid. So maybe they are wearing something more along the lines of what Counselor Troy wore to these functions than like an official Starfleet uniform, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Plus the really dark eyes, I believe too.
Oh, yep, that too.
So I can mingle and make kind of awkward, nervous small talk as best I can.
Okay.
So how was your flight?
Out of curiosity, is there any group that you would approach in particular?
I think I'd start. He'd find the person who's like the lowest rank, another lieutenant or an ensign, and just kind of chat with them, and then work his way up to lieutenant commander, not wanting to mingle too much with his superiors, as it were.
Okay, so we'll say you walk up to a pair of human ensigns, and as you approach, they kind of turn to accommodate you, and they say, "Lieutenant, you must be from the Ophion."
Yeah, that's correct. Yes, I'm here. We've been there and back again, and now we're about to take point in escorting you there. So I hope you find it exciting but less dangerous than we did.
Well, let's make introductions. The one talking points to himself and says, "I am Ensign Zwires. I am the Human Ops Officer of the Alexandra. And this is Ensign Kenrick, the helmsman of the Kodiak."
A pleasure to meet you both.
Yes, I'm curious if you are able to answer this question for me. I understand that the Ophion discovered a nebula of some sort on the passage to the Expanse. Is that correct?
Yes, we found a fairly interesting nebula, very unlike anything else. We passed it there, and I believe on the way back we beamed over a few canisters of the gases that make it up. It's the scientific explanation is it's almost like energy stem cells, in the way that stem cells can become any type of other cell. This energy can become almost any other type of energy and just kind of augments and improves the signal strength of sensors and communications. It's extremely fascinating.
It certainly sounds like it would have many applications if we were able to produce this phenomenon. And it's at this point that the non-com in the room, by the looks of his rank, he seems to be a senior chief. One of the Vulcans walks over as if he's heard this bit of conversation. He says, "Ensign," he says, Ensign, Lieutenant. And then he looks specifically at Locke and he says, "Were you able to, with these samples that you took, were you able to determine whether or not this is a natural phenomenon or not?"
We believe it was related to a star, or possibly a brown dwarf, that created the nebula. But since we only passed by and weren't able to explore the heart of the nebula, we couldn't discover if it was natural or artificial. Given the ancient Takan ruins in the relics in the fairly nearby, it could have been artificial, some sort of Takan relay, as it were. But it's with only a single data point, there's not enough evidence for any hard conclusions.
And the Vulcan kind of looks specifically at Ensign's wires, and he says, "Perhaps then it would be logical if we all, the Alexandra, the Kodiak, and the Ophion, all sent our own probes into the nebula as we pass it."
That seems like a very good idea to pass by. And of course, beam some more samples over. I'm finding them particularly useful and creative. I'm thinking about putting little canisters and probes myself to see if we can create little relays on the way.
Oh, I must apologize. My manners. I am Senior Chief Stoss, and I am the Chief Engineer of the Alexandra.
Pleased to meet you, Chief Sauce.
Yes, well. And then, in a very typical Chief Engineer type way, he will begin techno-babbling at you. So I did want to open it back up to Pinec and the captain before I go and do something with Beckett in a moment.
The captain will go grab a drink and at the same time loosen his dress uniform,
Okay.
feeling kind of sheepish.
Yeah, I was going to say, you guys are probably the most well-dressed individuals in the room.
Again, Pinec is not embarrassed by this. He's already grabbed a drink from an ensign, and he's very informally talking to Captain Valal. He says to her, "Captain, what do you believe the Romulan response to the convoy will be?"
Well, based on the reports that I've seen of your actions in the Expanse, it would be prudent if I were in their position to waylay the convoy, if not outright destroy it. Though the Romulan response as of late has been not perhaps in their usual wheelhouse, I believe is the human expression.
To actively try to destroy such a heavily guarded convoy, I find this such an overt action for the Romulans.
This is true. However, I believe the destruction of their facility might have a rather motivating aspect to their actions. They may act in a illogical fashion.
I would suspect such aggressiveness from the Klingons, but I suspect the Romulans will turn their attention not to the DMZ but to the Sabine Expanse again, perhaps trying to build another facility within another sector.
That would make the most sense. That is also the purpose of the listening posts that will be constructed along with the starbase, that we will hopefully be able to pick up such activity before a facility of that size is constructed yet again.
I see. So you are extending the Romulan border in practice with these listening posts, huh?
More or less, yes.
And then I'll just change the subject to say, have you ever made the observation as to that how predilected the Federation is to Greek mythology? You hardly see ships referencing Vulcan mythology.
Well, it is. And she kind of cracks a smile as much as a Vulcan can crack a smile. And she says, "It is my understanding that is a problem with the fleet yards. The abundance of human engineers there are why there are not more legends from Vulcan mythology."
I see, but you would still expect to see anything produced by the Andorian shipyards or Tellarite shipyards would have the same effect. But I believe that they're named somewhere much higher up on the in the hierarchy of the Federation.
That is an astute observation. However, and then she'll kind of go into a long diatribe about how, the shipyards, even though they might be run by Tellarites, are still mostly staffed by humans, yada, yada, yada. So actually, back on the bridge of the Ophion, Commander Beckett, Senior Chief Tin, kind of turns a little bit so that he can look at you back in the command chair, and he says, "Sir, were you expecting a shipment of blood wine?"
Can't say as I was.
Well, there is a Bajoran delegation outside in the airlock that says they have a. Well, that can't be right. They have 5 full cases of 2309? It's quite a lot.
That's a really good vintage as well. Hmm. Well, maybe we should go down and see what is going on. I'll ask, Sona's not on the bridge, is she?
Oh, she is.
Okay. I'll ask, Lieutenant Sona to come with me, and we will head to the airlock to find out why we are being delivered cases of blood wine.
Okay. So, out of curiosity, are you going to be taking along any equipment with you? Like, I'm assuming maybe one of you will take a tricorder, but anything else of note?
As far as tricorder goes, to be honest, Beckett doesn't go anywhere without a tricorder and a phaser.
Okay.
Simply because of the things that have happened in his background, he's never not armed.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't see why we couldn't take, Sona bring a pad of all deliveries that we were supposed to bring. Maybe things got mixed up. But I don't think anything other than a tricorder, no.
Okay. So you head down to the airlock, and sure enough, when you open up the hatch, you see that there is indeed cases of blood wine waiting there for you, along with 2 Bajoran workers. And one of them kind of walks up to you and says, "Well, if you'll just sign here," and he offers you a pad, we can get these bottles loaded on board.
Before I take the pad,
Mhm.
who ordered these?
Oh, well, it says here that a Beckett ordered these.
That's kind of strange because I'm Beckett and I didn't order these.
So I'd like, Beckett, if you could roll me a Insight plus Medicine, since I'm assuming you're probably carrying around a medical tricorder.
That is correct.
Yeah, I would say this will be at a difficulty of 2.
Okay.
And if you have xenobiology, it would apply here.
Oh, yes, I do.
Okay. So you run a scan over the bottles, and everything seems to check out. But as you're scanning the Bajorans, simply because they're in the same proximity, you realize their internals aren't matching up with their externals. By that I mean, you're detecting what are Romulan life signs from these Bajorans.
Oh, excellent. Um, Yeah, that's strange that I ordered this blood wine, but I didn't order this blood wine. Really only one thing can come to mind. And I hit my communicator and call for security to the airlock and red alert on Ophion.
Okay, so probably about this time, back on the Alexandra, Captain Skull, Lieutenant Shatsu has brought over another Cation, and has introduced you to Lieutenant Moral, the Cation tactical officer of the Kodiak. And Shatsu kind of goes on to say, it is interesting to run into my third cousin all the way out here in space, but I thought it prudent to introduce you to our captain here, simply because it is good to know the leader of your convoy. And Moral bows his head very respectfully at Captain Skull.
It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Morale.
Yes, I understand that you have seen some interesting things during your time.
You know, I've only held the rank of captain for about 2 months, and I've already got one of Starfleet's biggest finds under my belt, which, I could retire right now. They'd probably still write a book about me, but still much more to do, I think.
Indeed. Tell me, when it comes to phaser modulation, are you a fan of constant remodulation or only when necessary?
I prefer the only when necessary approach, unless it's Borg, in which case every modulation's a good modulation.
Indeed. And as he opens his mouth to say more, the Alexandra goes to red alert in response to the Ophions, and there's an immediate change in demeanor across the entire banquet. And very prominently, everyone at the banquet would hear Captain Azasal tap his own comm badge and says, "Bridge, report. What is going on?" And you all hear the voice say, "Unknown. The Ophion went to red alert, and we did as in response."
Pinnock will slap his comm badge. Ophion, report.
So Beckett, you would hear this.
If I am still able to talk with the two, if the two haven't done anything aggressive to me,
I'd like you to roll me a daring plus security at a difficulty of 1, and then I'll roll an opposed check to see if the Romulans in disguise are able to stop you from saying anything.
okay. I was going to say, daring plus security is not exactly my my money stat. Why are you doing this to me? But
well, it's how melee works in the system. So
it's all good. As far as applicable focuses, the only thing I have is hand phasers, and seeing as how I don't have one out, I don't think that would apply, correct?
Yeah, like hand-to-hand combat would apply, but not hand phasers as of yet.
Okay. You wanted security. Would everybody be okay with me spinning a momentum?
Go for it.
Yeah, I'd rather you get word out than be stuck in there by yourself.
Well, Sona's there too, but
Oh yeah. Well, then she should be able to get the rest of it out.
All right, 3 successes, so you get 2 momentum. So Beckett, what happens is one of the Romulans in disguise kind of rushes forward and tries to more or less kind of grab your throat and prevent you from talking, but your quick reflexes kick in, and you are able to duck low and use the Romulan's momentum against him and fling him over your back so that he drops to his own back on the floor behind you. And as you start to speak and tell the others what's going on, Sona kind of doesn't rush over, but Sona does kind of grab the other Romulan by the throat, almost in a similar motion, and begins lifting the Romulan up off the ground. But now you have the option to say what you were saying, Beckett.
I'll answer Panek in a very rushed. Romulans trying to sneak on the ship posed as Bajorans, dealing with issue now.
I'll slap on my. I'll defer to the captain for his orders.
Well, it's been a lovely party, captains, but looks like duty calls. If you don't mind, captains.
I nod along with the captain, and then turn to very fast leave the dinner.
Yeah, and I'll motion for Miss Shatsu and Mr. Locke to come join us.
Okay.
Especially Miss Shatsu.
When I get sufficiently far away from the door, I begin to jog towards the Tobolith, and I hit my comm badge, and I instruct the bridge to set up containment force fields around the location.
Okay.
Should we also alert the station? Maybe they can have security meet them from the other end.
Good idea, Lieutenant Locke.
Agreed.
Okay.
And I'll alert the station as well.
Okay. So at this point, with Beckett, Sona is kind of holding the Romulan up in the air, and he's still able to breathe, but it's still kind of labored exercise to do so. And he says, "You Federation scum! This is payback for what you've done." And Sona kind of quirks an eyebrow at him and says, "I fail to see how getting yourselves caught will change anything."
In the mid of her sentence, sorry, I was muted and
Oh,
yelling
sorry.
into my mic. In the middle of her talking, I will yell at her to kick the pallet, the container, whatever it is, full of the quote-unquote blood wine,
Mm-hmm.
back into the station,
Okay. So
and I will...
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you go.
As soon as I see them clear, because I'm guessing she's an android, so she's a little bit stronger, being she has a Romulan in the air.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as it clears our side of the airlock, I hit the button to slam the airlock closed.
Okay. So what Sona will do is immediately just kind of drop the Romulan, and with her android speed and strength, just gives the pallet a good shove back into the upper pylon number 3. And you push the button, and the Ophion's airlock just slams shut. And not a moment too soon, as the pallet of blood wine detonates, and you feel the explosion through the airlock, but the hull of the Ophion does not appear to have been breached.
And I will pull my phaser, and I will tell Sona,
Mm-hmm.
the one that she had in the air, I'll point to him as I point my phaser to the other one, and tell her, knock him unconscious, and I want to try to stun the one in front of me with my phaser.
Okay. I'd say normally it's going to be a control plus security at difficulty 2 to stun. But since he is kind of on the ground and can't really roll out of the way, I'm going to make it a difficulty 1.
Okay. And you said control plus security?
Yes.
Perfect. And I do have that lovely focus and hand phasers.
Hey,
Nice.
would you look at that? You get 2
Nice.
momentum off of this. So, I'm not even going to have you roll challenge die. You were able to stun the Romulan in question, and Sona does the equivalent of the Vulcan nerve pinch to the other. It is at this point that Skull, Panek, Locke, and Shatsu have all returned to the Ophion.
When Panek materializes, he walks over and enters his command code into the weapon locker in the transporter room.
Mm-hmm.
And he takes out a phaser and passes them along.
Okay.
Can't hurt. Thank you. Thanks, Exo. Skull to Beckett, report.
Beckett here. 2 in custody, crisis averted. Sona and I are fine. Please send my sincerest apologies to the station, as that was the only thing I could think of at the time to avoid the Ophion from taking the damage.
That's all right. Bridge, are there any reported injuries from the explosion?
Senior Chief Tin responds, "No casualties reported, sir. However, there is now a rather large hole in the bulkheads of the airlock."
Panek will ask what if the Ophion sustained any damage.
As far as I'm able to tell, sir, superficial damage.
Wonderful. Report back to the bridge, both of you. I'm sure Captain Kira would love to hear what's going on. Miss Shatsu, please secure those Romulans in the brig. I'm certain that there will be many questions for them.
Right away, sir. Go ahead.
And while he was talking to everybody else, even before he sent Shatsu down here, I'll call for a security team to meet us here. I'm not leaving this area, and I'm not letting Sona leave this area until a security team comes and takes these guys.
I got you.
Fair enough.
And then Panek will order a yellow alert, and and tell the bridge to transmit our status to the Alexandria and Kodiak.
Okay. So kind of to set the scene, so Shatsu meets up with a trio of security officers that then arrive with Beckett and begin escorting away the two Romulans towards the brig. Those of you that run to the bridge, you see that yellow alert is still going on, and that you have received communiques from the Alexandra and the Kodiak that they have where is it? There it is. That they have made it so that the transport ships are now undergoing a full security sweep to check for any possible signs of trouble along these lines.
I would like to accompany the Romulans,
Okay.
air quotes, to the brig and do a quick scan on them to make sure they're not carrying any technology that could A, their escape, or B, some kind of suicide capsule.
Okay. Roll me a. I think it would still be an insight plus medicine, and I'll make the difficulty here a 3.
Ugh. And if I burn one of the momentum, guys?
Go right
How many
ahead.
do we have?
We
You
have
got
5.
Wow, I wasn't keeping track.
I rolled really, really well.
Ooh.
Okay. That complication will be interesting. So, Locke, as you run a scan of the first Romulan, doesn't appear that he has anything on him. However, when you go to scan the second one, something very peculiar happens. Your tricorder reports that there's a buildup of muons around this particular Romulan.
How harmful is that? Is that kind of a...
So, muons aren't particularly harmful except in very large quantities, but it's a more exotic type of particle that would be very strange to just suddenly find coalescing around someone.
Is it growing in intensity, or is it kind of
It,
just...
it is indeed growing in intensity.
All right, set the Romulans down, step back, emergency force field in this area.
Okay, all of that happens.
Keep scanning, watching, seeing what happens.
Okay. So, because the Ophion shields are up, what happens is the Romulan in question just kind of smirks and says, "Well, it was a nice try, Federation scum, but I won't be seeing you again." And then he taps what appears to be a subdermal transmitter on his left shoulder, and he closes his eyes as if expecting a beam out, but nothing happens. Then he kind of opens an eye, taps his shoulder again, nothing happens.
I will look at this guy.
Mm-hmm.
I'll even kneel down to where I'm eye to eye with him.
Mm-hmm.
Ancient Earth saying, sucks when your plan sucks.
And it's probably about this point that Shatsu kind of goes over and, unless you stop her, is probably going to actually knock this guy unconscious.
Nah, I'm gonna stare him straight in the face while she does it.
Okay, establish that dominance.
Damn straight.
So the good news is it's after that whole thing went on, it's a fairly trivial affair to secure the Romulans in the brig and ensure that they won't be going anywhere.
Does Beckett communicate the failed escape to the bridge?
As after I get my moment of my adrenaline calming down and not wanting to punch this guy in the face anymore, I will message to the bridge. that apparently one of the Romulans had a backup plan of trying to get out or something along those lines, but with the shields up, he can't. There may possibly be a cloaked ship somewhere nearby.
All right. I'll have Senior Chief Thin or Locke's not on the bridge. He's down with the Romulans, correct?
Correct.
Probably so.
Okay. So Senior Chief Thin or the replacement security officer do a thorough scan of the area for tachyons or other signs of cloaked vessel. Ask the station and the Kodiak and the Alexandra to do the same, please.
Okay. I'm going to say that between the 3 ships and DS9 proper, you will indeed detect a very small cloaked shuttle that is beginning to move away from the station. It was maybe 20,000 kilometers off of Upper Pylon 3.
Okay.
Lieutenant Thin, get a tractor beam on that shuttle right now.
Yeah. Sona, intercept, Thane, tractor beam it.
Okay. So Sona disengages the Ophion from DS9, and the Ophion kind of swoops on over, and right on cue, Senior Chief Tin causes a tractor beam to emanate from the front of the ship and lock on to what is at first empty space, but as the tractor beam gets a hold, the cloak and area of space begins to shimmer, and sure enough, you now are able to see on the view screen this now non-cloaked Romulan shuttlecraft.
I wonder if every day at Deep Space Nine is like this. Any sign of further life signs on board?
There are 2 Romulans on the shuttle.
Oh, very well. Let's get more security down to Transporter Room 2. Miss Shatsu, please meet them, and please prepare to meet our guests. Actually, no. Second thought. Let's bring the whole shuttle into our shuttle bay.
Okay.
Senior
If
Chief
possible.
Thin, is the shuttle armed at all?
No, sir. It appears just to be a standard Romulan shuttlecraft, a Type 3 if it matters, sir. It has minimal disruptors, really only 1 disruptor bank, is only capable of Warp 3, and, as we've seen, is equipped with a cloaking device.
See if you can't disable that disruptor.
Aye, sir. Permission to fire a phaser burst.
I turn to the captain.
Let's not destroy the shuttle, but let's prevent the shuttle from doing any damage. It's still a new ship. I don't want to damage the paint.
Low intensity phaser burst, Senior Chief.
Aye, sir. So I'm going to let you guys roll this. You would be rolling 3 challenge die. And this is basically to see whether or not, A, you're able to disable it, and B, if you put too much juice into it.
Who's rolling?
Anyone can roll.
What's your attributes and discipline again? Sorry.
Oh, no, it's just challenge die. So just 3 challenge die. Okay. So, interestingly, Tin causes a very low-powered phaser burst to come from the phaser array on the front of the ship. It hits the Romulan shuttle, but nothing happens. And Tin kind of says, well, good news. I hit it. Bad
Okay.
news. I apparently just barely scratched their hull.
All right, let's increase the power by a couple decimal points, shall we? I'll try rolling.
Okay, so this time it would be 4 challenge die.
Okay. Oh, God.
Oh, Lord.
Is this
So it's...
macro working?
So Tin fires another phaser burst, and this time he starts to frown, and he says, Sirs, either they have the Romulan equivalent of a blade of armor, or we have a problem with our starboard phaser array.
Begin a diagnostic of that phaser array, Lieutenant.
Of
I'm
course.
just going to test something. I'm just going to test, make sure the macro's still working. Okay, macro still works.
Yeah.
So yeah, just checking.
Unlucky quantum dice, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Pinnock will suggest to the captain. I suggest we do a more intense investigation of this shuttle before we allow it aboard the Ophion, Captain. We've already had one situation to almost overwhelm us.
Agreed. Are there shields down at least?
Oh yeah. Since you've got a tractor beam on them, they can't really have their shields up at the moment.
Okay, let's beam the. Miss Shetsu, please divert the welcoming committee to transporter room 2. When they're in position, transport the pilots and take them to the brig.
Aye, sir.
Did the bridge sensors pick up the buildup of muons in the Romulan in the bay?
They did, but since Shatsu, Locke, and Beckett handled it, Tin did not report it.
All right, then I'm going to calm the station and ask them to transmit their station records of these Romulan Bajoran wannabes.
Okay. So, again, for sake of argument, we'll say here that Shatsu is able to now have the 4 Romulans in the brig for questioning at your convenience. Locke, you can certainly return to the bridge at this point if you so wish. And Beckett, same goes for you. I don't know if you wanted to be on the bridge with the Romulans back in sickbay, whatever you'd like.
I actually wanted to cut in and
Sure.
Everybody that was around the Romulans when he tried to transport out, we all saw him hit you said like a subdermal device, correct?
Correct.
I want to scan for that device so that way I can disable it, and then also just in case it happens to also be, let's say, a dead man switch, and then also check the other now 4 Romulans for the same thing.
Roll me another insight plus medicine, and this will be at a difficulty of 2.
Okay, and may I use xenobiology as a focus?
I'll allow it, sure.
Alright.
Hey, you got the successes you needed. So it turns out that only the 1 Romulan has the subdermal transponder.
Okay, and I would like to disable it as well.
Okay, so it's a fairly trivial task for you to, with your tricorder, overload it in such a way as to not harm the Romulan, but to make it useless.
Perfect. And then upon completing that, then I will leave. I'll leave the brig and just actually head back to sickbay.
Okay. Locke, are you headed for the bridge? You doing something with the Romulans?
I'm heading to the bridge.
Okay.
I'm gonna check to see if there's any signals sent out from the Romulan shuttle.
Okay. Simply because it's probably been a while since we've done a map change, I'm just going to put you guys on the bridge. As things begin to come together, the records from DS9, as is discovered on the fact when they're called up, the records are bogus. Their quote-unquote cover story was that they had initially come from Dakar province and that they were here as quote-unquote migrant workers. Unfortunately, the station doesn't have any record of whether or not their whereabouts, whether or not they have any information about the whereabouts of these individuals before that time. And out of curiosity, did any player character want to run the interrogation, or should I just have Shatsu do it kind of as a off-screen type thing?
I wouldn't mind getting a little bit in that, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you have Starfleet intelligence history and experience with the Romulans. I'd let you do that.
I've witnessed a
Also
few interrogations. So.
I'd also extend an invitation to Kira and Ro to attend, since it kind of was their station that these guys blew up.
Oh yeah. Okay.
And
So my main question for this is going to be, what type of information are you trying to get out of these Romulans?
Captain?
let's see. First of all, what is their purpose and why are they here?
Mm-hmm.
I want to. They're probably Tal Shiar, but if they could provide some sort of proof for that, that'd be nice. Also, I'm now that we have their shuttle, I'll have the Mirthrin and Torvig go through their logs just to
Yeah, that's what I was going to suggest. Yeah.
dissect their computer systems, see what other information they may have passed on to the Romulan fleet, and just sort of see what else the Romulans have in store for our little fleet.
When he does that, I order a very intense scan of the shuttle to make sure that it's not going to blow up on us, and then I go over with Senior Chief Thin and Mirthrin, I guess, or Bragg or Prague or whatever. What's his name? Tell it right.
His name is Prag.
Prague and Prague, Senior Chief Thin and myself will beam over to the shuttle and attempt to go through their database.
Okay. Simply because we do have other matters to hopefully get to, I'm going to treat this as more of a narrative type thing. Locke, between your Starfleet intelligence experience and with Shatsu helping you out, along with Rolarin and Kira, you are in fact able to confirm that this was a Tal Shiar operation. Obviously, they're not going to give you their true names. They're not going to tell you who they report to or if there are other plots going on. But it's probably a safe bet that the Tal Shiar, if not the entire Romulan military, knows that you're coming at this point. As far as the shuttle is concerned, you actually do in fact find that there is the Romulan equivalent of a blade of armor, and that this shuttle was more or less equipped to run a blockade. It has a beefed up warp core, so it's got a slightly larger quantum singularity than usual, and its logs were probably wiped the moment the pilots were transported away, so you weren't able to get a whole lot of information off of them. But all said and done, unless any of you would object to it, Kira would take possession of the Romulans for further questioning back on DS9.
I'm okay with that.
I'd suggest at least someone of the senior staff go just to make sure that because this was an attack on the Ophion.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it was an attack on the Ophion, but also on Deep Space Nine. If we can spare an officer for the short term, certainly go and observe, but we do have a mission to attend to.
Right.
Well,
Okay.
we can't exactly hold them in our brig for a long period. Plus, since this Deep Space Nine is a Bajoran station, I don't know if they have an extradition treaty with the Romulans, but clearing up that paperwork might give them more time to discuss matters with them.
That was my thoughts exactly. So
Are we taking possession of the shuttle?
That was my next question is, are you guys going to keep the shuttle, or are you going to turn it over to DS9?
I
Captain?
mean, it is technically illegal for the Federation to put a ship that has an active cloaking device, but this isn't a Federation ship. And this close to the Romulan space might come in handy. Well, I say we'll keep it. we'll note it in our logs. If there's any objections, I'll note them in my log as well. And if we're ordered to give it up, well, we'll do so begrudgingly. But it could potentially be useful this close to Romulan space.
Good to know. All right.
I'll disable the phaser, the disruptor array from inside, and then order it tractored in.
Okay. So all that'll happen. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take a 5-minute break, and then when we come back, we will hopefully begin the actual convoy part of this episode. So be back in about 5 minutes, guys.
10-4.
Alrighty.
All right, I'm back.
Welcome back.
Oh, thank you. Gives me actually time to read my PMs. Which, by the way, if you guys ever do send me something on Discord, let me know, because when I am in streamer mode, I don't get the notification for it.
Will do. There's also GM Whisper on Roll20.
There's that too. Either works. The benefit being, if you do it in Roll20, everyone watching the stream would be able to see it. Whereas if you wanted to keep it super private, the Discord PM would be better.
I've had to use it once or twice to kind of roll against my team in the games.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always a fun moment when they suddenly are shocked to learn that I've been doing something to them behind their back. Like I had to knock a gun out of one of my friend's hand because he was shooting it at a zombie and he was alerting other zombies. So suddenly he just was like, the GM was like, "Hey, roll an opposing roll against this." Blah blah blah. He's like, "What? You're hitting me?"
Can't have those zombies coming in, man.
Back now.
Welcome back. Alright, so we got another 2 minutes.
Grooving to the mixed music, the linked music.
Gets everyone in the mood.
Every time they said Convoy, that's what I thought of as well. Or the Simpsons version of.
But which one of us is Rubber Duck?
Not sure. Which one squeaks when we hit it? Mixing metaphors.
I actually kind of wonder now if you guys have a mascot for the Duck Lounge. Like, is it an actual duck that's just been mounted on the wall? Is it like an oversized rubber ducky that's just put somewhere? I mean,
Or
these are all
Donald.
important questions.
Donald or Daffy?
Yeah, Donald or Daffy. That's all important questions.
I'm picturing actually Donald and Daffy arm wrestling as kind of like painted on like a window.
Who was the Daffy Duck spaceman character?
Duck Dodgers.
Yeah.
Not the Green Lantern.
Well, I'm a Green Lantern fan, but I mean, I think Duck Dodgers is cooler.
All right, so we're up at up to 5 minutes, so we'll start things back up. Beckett, if you're gone, you can't hear me. So we'll just start things off, and Beckett can chime back in when he's here. So with all of that previously resolved, and with every transport and every ship in the convoy having been checked for possible further Tal Shiar explosive type things, basically a full security sweep. Once everything has cleared, the convoy itself will begin to assemble in formation just off of DS9. The Ophion is at the front of a triangle-shaped pattern, with the Alexandra and the Kodiak taking up the other corners, and with the transports in the center. On cue, you all begin to angle towards the safety corridor, towards the Sabine Expanse. But the final order to engage and kind of say any last-minute type things to the convoy is in Captain Skull's hands.
Okay. Once we've... quick question
Sure.
on capabilities in multi-vector assault mode.
Mhm.
How effective are the sensors of each module when separated versus that of the ship when combined?
Based on my understanding of how it works, since you are essentially 3 separate ships acting as one, you would have probably 1/3 of the sensor capabilities as if you stayed as one ship.
Okay. Tactical assessment. Would it make sense for the Ophion to enter multi-vector assault mode to cover more ground while in the safety corridor?
Well, is this to the crew or to you?
No,
to the DM?
to senior officers.
Captain, I believe at one point the Enterprise used multiple ships. Of the Nautilus was of one, I believe, to create a gravimetric sensor net to detect cloak Romulan ships passing into the Klingon border.
I seem to recall such a maneuver taking place. Would it be feasible to run such a thing with... Because we're only 3 ships, 5 if we separate, and I doubt that the freighters carry such advanced sensor tech arrays on board.
And then I'll ask Senior Chief then if it's possible to use the modules to create a mobile sensor net with the Alexandria and Kodiak.
It certainly is possible, sir, but the the effective scanning range, as it were, would be limited. If I understand the scenario that we are essentially copying this sort of maneuver from, the difference was they had close to 19 or 20 ships, whereas we will only have 5 at maximum.
But we are also not monitoring an entire border.
This is also a fair point.
What would the effective radius be, Chief? Centered on the convoy.
I would say several AU. Maybe max of 6 AU.
And how wide is the corridor at its widest?
At its widest or its narrowest?
At its widest.
At its widest, the corridor is approximately 3 light years across.
Okay, so that's actually quite effective. Oh no, AU, solar units, light years are different than AU.
Right.
Yeah, sun to Earth.
Yeah. Okay, so...
Any heads up is better than no no indication that the Romulans will be showing up at all.
Agreed. And if they do show up, we can easily break the net and respond in kind. Very well. When we enter the Expanse, we'll enter multi-vector assault mode and begin a set up that net.
Okay.
Unless there's objections.
I'm not sure of the effectiveness at warp, however.
That is true. They were primarily stationary.
And I'm not sure how long we can maintain our multi-vector assault mode at high warp.
Oh,
So
you weren't on shift for the stress test, were you?
Well, only the saucer section has a much smaller warp engine than the other sections.
So Shatsu will kind of actually speak up at this and says, well, if I understand the maximum speed of the transports correctly, they are only capable of warp 8.5, which I am fairly confident that the saucer section would be able to maintain.
Very well. Okay.
Well, the transport's maintaining high warp anyway.
It's a maneuver we will attempt. If it turns out not to be effective, we'll redesign our protection efforts on the fly. That's the Starfleet way, isn't it?
Understood, Captain. And then I'll slap my badge. All stations prepare for separation.
Okay.
Oh no, not yet. We're still a couple of light years away from the Expanse, or from the safety passage. Once we reach the safety passage, we'll split. Apologies if I miscommunicated. Anyways.
Yeah, I just before, sorry to cut in a little bit here, but it probably still would be prudent to get people moving for separation, simply so that there's enough people in each section.
Yeah, agreed. Lieutenant Locke, you'll stay on the you'll stay up here. We'll take the spearhead of the formation. Chief Tin, please attend with Commander Pinek, and Miss Shatsu shall join Commander Beckett on the tertiary section.
As I move tokens around.
And grab whatever other navigators' personnel are needed, of course.
That's what I was going to say.
I grabbed my usual pilot guy. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it works perfect. I will grab Instant Lotus, and I'll she's the helmswoman from Beta Shift, and I'll take her down to tertiary.
Okay. For some reason, one of the sections didn't have the shield set up. That might have been bad. All right. So yeah, I think the only thing we're missing at this point is a convoy-wide message from Captain Skull.
All right. Once all the tactical plans are dispersed to all ships, this is Captain Skull to all convoy vessels. Let's head out.
All right. So on cue, the convoy jumps to warp 8.5 and begins heading towards the safety corridor. And I'm going to put you guys on this very pretty map. So as you can see, this is more or less what the formation looks like. There's a little bit of 3D involved here. That's a little bit hard to understand, but basically, if you imagine the Kodiak and Alexandra and the first section of the Ophion all in the same plane, and then you have the beta section of the Ophion above, and the tertiary or gamma section of the Ophion below. So you have almost like a safety net around these 7 transports. And as I said, your maximum speed is warp 8.5. And that's, again, due to the nature of the transports, since they're hauling a large amount of materials, people, and other supplies needed for everything that's going to be built in the Icarus system. At that speed, it will take you approximately 15 days to reach the other side of the safety corridor, and then another 2 after that to reach the Icarus system. The first 7 days in the corridor will be in Cardassian space, with the remaining time being sandwiched by the Klingon and the Romulan held sectors. So, pretty much, unless any of you decides to start pressing buttons that cause things to blow up, for the first few hours, everyone's on alert and ready for everything. But as the hours begin to tick by, and as shifts begin to change, it really doesn't take all that long for the separated crew of the Ophion to settle into that kind of restless waiting that is very common of all convoy protection duty. So my main operative question here is, what are you all doing during this time? Since the Ophion is split up, obviously you can't just go between the sections, but I am curious if nothing else, what each of you as players would be doing during this time.
I have an idea with Mr. Locke.
Okay.
Since we have some time, okay, that was Mr. Internet problems. Since we have some time, and we have this really cool nebula that we're going to get into, we're going to pass by. I'm assuming that'll be roughly 8 days away, 9 days.
Close enough, yes.
Okay. Plenty of time to configure a scanner probe of some sort. What my suggestion is that we take a probe, a sensor probe, and we rig it to the 9s just to scan every frequency imaginable, and some that we come up with on the fly. Launch it into that nebula, and that should hopefully allow us to spot any Romulans or other threats as we pass through.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Right.
Okay. I want to communicate with I think it's Section 2 that has the shuttle bay.
Mm-hmm.
Get them to kind of go through since the logs are wide, but the communicator, like whatever like communication dish they have on the shuttle, on our stolen shuttle, should have something in a Romulan frequency, so we can find out.
Well, most of that was wiped.
Yeah, there might be like something in the actual communications buffer that you can find, like the frequency. So I want to like
I get what
take
you're
what we
saying.
can find there, and just
so someone on Section 2, really anyone on Section 2 could roll this.
What is it?
This would be a Insight plus Engineering.
Well, then I'll have tin rolling, right?
Okay. So if you run a roll for 10, it would be an Insight plus Engineering at a difficulty of 3. And we did have a scene change, so I think you guys are only at Momentum 3.
Difficulty 3?
Difficulty 3, yes.
I don't think he has any applicable focuses.
You got 3 successes. So interestingly, you are indeed able to salvage several frequencies, in fact, of Romulan subspace communication.
I definitely, when we're rigging up our probe to the 9s, I definitely want to put those frequencies in the ones we're watching for.
Okay.
I transmit this data to the other sections and the Alexandria and Kodiak.
Okay.
But that's, not make it too overt that we know that those frequencies. Just kind of try to receiving but not transmitting.
I gotcha. So Shatsu would probably, at this point, tune into those channels and just kind of leave an open comm line so that if there is any kind of communique that she'd be able to pick it up. But for the time being, it's pretty quiet. Not really picking up much of anything.
Quiet is good.
Quiet is indeed good. All right. So, again, if you have anything that comes to mind, just shout and I'll shut up. But we'll say that the next several days go by without any sort of incident. The most interesting thing to really happen is the CMO of the Kodiak, Commander Ibega, the Betazoid that some of you might have noticed at the Alexandra dinner, is going to hail the section containing Commander Beckett.
I will answer pleasantly.
Okay. So you see that she pops up on the view screen and she says, Commander, as one CMO to another, I thought it might be prudent for me to communicate the fact that there's been a small outbreak of Felusian flu on the Kodiak, and I've been able to contain and remedy the outbreak, but I am still unable to determine where this flu might have originated from.
Huh. And no indications whatsoever. Nobody coming back from shore leave, anything like that.
No, our only time that we would have mingled with anybody that would have had it would have been if those of the officers of the Ophion were carriers when we had that dinner on the Alexandra.
Or crew on the Alexandria.
Well, as far as I'm aware, we did not have shore leave at all between either the Kodiak or the Alexandra while at DS9.
Well, their captain was over on the Alexandria.
Well, I mean, more that, so that to maybe make it a bit more clear out of character. So, the Alexandra and the Kodiak stayed self-contained, except for the whole dinner thing.
We're the only ones that actually left the 3 ships.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
What she's trying to say is, yeah, it would have had to come from someone outside of the 3 ships. So, for example, it's maybe someone on DS9 transmitted it, kind of a thing.
Gotcha. I will thank her and let her know that I will. I'll go through our crew, especially the ones that were on shore leave, but as of yet, none have shown any signs. But I'll look into it with my people.
As you were. And,
thank you.
View screen cuts off. So for sake of argument, I'm going to say that it doesn't take you all that long across all 3 sections to discover that the source of the Felusian flu is still unknown. Everyone's been scanned or has at least gone through a very minimal sort of overlook. And it doesn't appear that anyone on the Ophion in any of the 3 sections is a carrier.
So, I'm aware of the scan stuff now, right?
Yeah, you would have been made aware of this.
Well, then I order Beckett to transmit his findings back to Deep Space Nine and have them made aware of this situation.
Yeah, I will definitely send a message back to my new good friend Dr. Bashir, as well as asking him in the message if he has seen an outbreak on DS9 of it.
Okay. The message will come back that he has not seen such an outbreak, but he will certainly be on the lookout for it.
Do we know the alpha patient, the patient 0?
Yeah, unfortunately, that's the missing link at this point. They know obviously who was the first one to report with symptoms, but the initial carrier is unknown.
Were prisoners scanned as well?
I would assume that, yeah, they would have been scanned when you transfer them over to DS9.
Okay, dope.
Well, they tried blood one with us. They might have tried biological warfare in the Kodiak.
That's actually a very good point. I'll hail back the Kodiak CMO.
Okay. So Ibega comes back up on the screen and she says, "Oh, what is it I can do for you?"
So concerning the the issue that you communicated with me about this outbreak of this flu, I've scanned my entire ship and all our whole crew. I've also messaged back to DS9, and we have no patients and no traces of the flu anywhere. If one of our senior staff brought up a good point that they tried, they being the Romulans, tried bringing blood wine on masked as, or explosives masked as blood wine. Did the Kodiak take on any supplies from DS9?
We did take a small shipment of biomimetic gel simply because we were running low, but that would have been the only vector that such a thing could have come in on.
It might behoove a scan of maybe the internal life support. Maybe something has gotten in through there.
That is a good assumption. I'll get back to you on that.
Please do. I will help in any way that I can.
Okay. So while that's going on, those of you in Alpha Section, it happens to be the bi-weekly cultural night. And obviously it's a little less attended since, 2/3 of the crew is not in the Alpha Section. But those of you that attend the cultural night, you are treated to the fantastic Betazoid action movie, Pirates of Risa, Curse of the Tox Uhat. It's very, very pirate-oriented film. It's very interesting. The special effects are maybe a little bit subpar, but, that's Betazoid movies for you. I would say there's not a whole lot of performances unless those of you among the senior staff wish to make your own. But it's still a fairly pleasant cultural night.
I'll take the stage.
Okay.
And I will play them, give them a brief understanding of symbiotic hiss and how we memorize and store the memories of past hosts and experiences and call upon them if needed.
Mm-hmm.
And I will explain to them the life of my second host as an opera singer and performance artist. I will not sing the songs because I don't want to blow out their eardrums or destroy my vocal cords.
Mm-hmm.
But I will play them a section of opera stuff. And just for the sake of argument, it probably would sound something similar to the diva opera from Fifth Element.
Okay. So this is kind of an eye-opening moment for those officers that attend Cultural Night. Obviously, they only see the captain, but every so often. So seeing the captain in a more informal setting and more or less him opening up the stage to talk about himself really gets the crew interested and is kind of a very good social thing to have happened. In fact, whenever you finish with your performance, Jisa kind of pulls you aside and says, I don't think I need to be a Betazoid to tell you that probably earned you quite a few brownie points with the crew.
Well, thank you, Counselor. Honestly, I did as much for myself as I did it for the crew.
Well, that is how all cultural nights should go.
Agreed.
And it's at this point that Gamma section of the Ophion would begin to report that they're detecting 3 Cardassian ships headed in the general direction of the convoy. More specifically, 2 Galler class and 1 Hideki class.
All right.
Gamma is third, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I will report the findings to the captain and let him disseminate the information from there.
Yep. Any senior staffs, please report to your respective bridges
Okay.
Connect here.
and order As I'm heading to the bridge, I'm just going to ask: are there weapons or shields online?
No, they just appear to be heading in your direction.
All right, let's proceed. Shields down, weapons down. The Cardassians are hypothetically our allies, so
Shall we hail them, Captain?
are they within hailing range?
Oh yeah, you could hail them.
Then by all means, please open a channel.
All right.
Channel open, sir.
So, Captain Skull, you are greeted by a appropriately dressed and adorned gull, and the gull says, "I am Gull Thos of the CDS Hondus."
Yes, Hondas, okay. And well met. I am Captain Barton Skull of the USS Ophion.
It is a pleasure to meet you. What is the purpose of this communication?
Well, you were heading in our direction. Our ships were going to intercept. I just figured that I would reach out and bid you a friendly hello.
Ah, this must be a Federation thing. While the gesture is appreciated, we are simply on a standard patrol. I would be happy to relay our flight plan, as well as the flight plans of previous patrols, if that would satisfy your curiosity.
That would be greatly appreciated. In the meantime, I will send you our projected flight plan as well.
Excellent. And at that point, the gull terminates communication.
Have we just wait a couple minutes and ask if we've received their transmitted patrol plans?
You have indeed.
All right. Access or see if we can tie into the Cardassian fleet networks and see if there's a record for the CDS. What was it? The Honduras?
The Hondus.
The Hondas. The Hondas or its captain.
So, even though the Cardassian Empire was more or less taken over, then handed over to a provisional government, etc., etc., I'm going to say that you're not able to just randomly call up their ship logs. But what I will say is that you are able to cross-reference the flight plan data with probably DS9's own logs of the area and any other Federation vessels that might have come through here. The Gull Thos appears to be telling the truth. This just seems to be a standard patrol.
Fair enough. We'll just keep them under watch while we are still within sensor range. But once they and us pass ways, I see no reason to get any more paranoid.
Okay. So before I skip ahead again a little bit, did anyone have any last-minute things they wanted to do before you reach the space between the Romulan territory and the Klingon territory?
I'm good.
Nope.
Not I.
I do have one question for one of our NPC crewmen.
Okay, which NPC crewman in particular?
Ensign Lotus.
Okay.
Mainly because obviously she doesn't have a background on her character sheet. Did she serve in the Cardassian military?
She did not, actually.
Okay.
She tells you.
Okay.
Well, when I came of age, it was around 2375, so it was at that time that I headed to join Starfleet Academy. This is actually my very first station as a member of Starfleet.
Oh, excellent. I was going to ask if you had been in the, if you had been in the military, if you knew anything about our new neighbor, I guess you could say. And I kind of motioned towards the screen where we have that Galler class and his wingmates.
Okay. She just kind of looks at them for a moment and shrugs and says, "I can tell you that they're Galler class, but aside from that, sir, I've got nothing."
Very well. And then I don't have anything else, so.
Okay. And just in case this comes up, I might be getting Lotus's background confused with someone else's, but I'm almost like 90% sure that this is her first station. Anyways, so the remaining days before you guys hit the neutral territory, again, passes without incident. The whole outbreak of the Thelusian flu kind of gets written off as just a space curiosity, as many things that happen in space are. But again, everything's quiet. However, when you guys do enter this neutral territory, there's a very rapid change in the crew's demeanor across all sections of the Ophion. They go from waiting around for something to happen to actively anticipating possible trouble. Jisa will specifically report to the captain that the betazoids among the crew are getting what is almost an overwhelming sense of the crew's anxiety. If Jisa had to put a culprit, her best guess is that the destruction of the Tal Shiar base and how the Romulans tried to attack the Ophion at DS9, that this is probably why the crew is feeling super anxious.
All right. I'm gonna. I think putting the anxious energy to use is a better use of everyone's time rather than just sitting around being angsty. I think I'll order the fleet to yellow alert while we're in the passageways.
Okay.
That way, people will at least feel like they're on duty and doing something rather than just waiting around.
Okay.
I personally will be spending more time just walking the decks and making my presence known that I am available if necessary.
Okay.
Pinneck orders a couple of readiness drills for his section.
Okay. Okay.
Beckett will actually follow suit on the readiness drills, as well as personally checking on and having small conversations with his quote-unquote bridge staff.
Okay.
Sounds like a good idea.
Just
Readiness drills all around.
Yep, and just kind of keeping them not as on edge.
I gotcha. Okay. So, all of this goes on. And for the next 2 days, nothing really happens. You don't detect any incoming Romulans or Klingons. There's no issues. You just keep continuing traveling at warp 8.5. However, sometime during the 9th day, one of the transports communicates the fact that they need to drop out of warp for a few hours. They're detecting a dangerous buildup of muon particles that could result in a warp core breach if it is not properly handled.
Muon, that's probably not a coincidence. Yeah, well, we travel together, so let's drop out of warp, assume defensive formation, and of course, offer the talents of any of our engineering staff if they need it.
Okay. So since Mirthrin isn't here, I'll just NPC him. As the convoy drops out of warp and Mirthrin kind of beams on over, Mirthrin comes back and says, well, sir, I think that this might simply be a coincidence. I'm not really detecting any abnormalities over here that would suggest that this buildup of muons is deliberate. It could be that we just simply ran through an anomaly and didn't detect it.
Thank you.
Pinneck orders a scan of his section's warp core as well.
Okay. The good news, no muons. You're fine.
Good. Yeah, similar. We'll just, make sure that everyone else is good.
Okay.
Before proceeding again.
So we'll say around the fleet, there are these scans that go on while the buildup problem is handled. And yeah, it just seems to be that one of the transports maybe, hit a few stray particles of muons along the way, kind of a thing. But the process does take a few hours. So you are kind of sitting ducks for that few hours. Again, nothing really appears on sensors, even with your tachyon detection nets kind of set up. It's just kind of one of those things where, as characters, you guys are probably on edge, and maybe a little bit more anxious than usual because you're expecting something else to go wrong. Go ahead.
Hinek has the composure focus,
Mm-hmm.
and there's also mental discipline and emotional control.
So for you, you're probably like one more step of concern, but otherwise you're probably just same old, same old.
Alrighty.
So I'm going to say that unless any of you again begins to stray from the convoy, after the few hours have elapsed and Mirthrin's return to the Ophion, the convoy resumes its passage towards the Sabine Expanse. And it's at this point that Beta Section, your officer that is currently handling the sensors, kind of turns in their chair and says, "Sir, I'm detecting a rather localized and perhaps dangerous shower of rocks headed in our direction."
Is the deflector not able to provide protection?
Well, I believe that it will. I just found it odd that there seems to be what could be, and they turn around to look at their console and then look back. Hundreds of these rocks in our, coming toward us from the Klingon side of the border.
I want an intensive scan of this debris. Extrapolate a trajectory path for me as well.
Of course. We'll say that since it is your section, if you want to just roll me straight 2d20, the target number here would be 13. And that's how we'll handle most of the NPC crew. So we'll just have them be at an overall 13. Okay, so they'll get one success here. So you can spend momentum to ask an additional question, just as a reminder. But what the officer on duty will report is that there are two things. The first is that they are detecting a tetryon buildup along the corridor's edges, and that it is almost as if someone is trying to deliberately restrict movement through the corridor in this particular section. The second bit of information is that the rocks that are headed in your direction, this meteor storm, they are on a direct intercept course with you at the moment.
Connect to Alpha section.
Go ahead.
We're detecting an anomalous field of rocks that are heading on an intercept course, as well as a tachyon buildup along the DMZ.
Tachyon.
Tetryons, but close.
Tetryons. Okay. Great.
From the Klingon side, you said?
Well, that could be a question you ask.
I use my studious and one momentum to ask if they're coming from the Klingon side of the DMZ.
It is coming from both, and I'll give you this extra bit of information for free. There appear to be this series of mines or other small little installations or powered things that are generating these tetryon particles. And they are seated on both sides of both borders.
Okay. Can we destroy those mines with our phasers?
You could, but you'd have to drop out of warp to do it.
Seems they want us to drop out of warp anyways. Can we proceed through this section at warp without risk?
I would say that you would have to get in a single file kind of procession. Otherwise, it's kind of like that one section of space that's in TNG where that ships have to go through a certain area of a corridor to get through it. The same episode where we found out that, hey, maybe warp travel is damaging subspace, yada, yada, yada. So if you want to keep the convoy moving at warp speed and you don't mind single file through this area, you certainly can stay at warp. Otherwise, you would have to drop to impulse for at least 12 hours.
I would personally rather keep moving. Getting us through this minefield at warp speed will. If this minefield is here for us to drop out of warp, then what happens when we drop out of warp? I'd rather not find out.
Okay.
Let's do single file. Ophion Alpha will take point. Then we'll try to interleave escort ships with transport ships.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll a challenge die for every ship in the convoy, just to see if they are struck by any meteors at all. And the number you don't want to see on this is 2. So there are 10, 12. So 12 challenge die. And we'll just go in order from the first section of the Ophion backwards. So Section 1, that transport. All right, how many numbers is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I'm going to give this transport a red dot. And then the next one, another red dot. And then the remaining transports and the Alexandra and the Kodiak are fine. Okay. So what happens to the convoy is obviously you go single file with interweaving ships as necessary to keep the security. However, 2 of the transports, as they go through this area of space, are indeed struck by the meteor shower. And it's a very curious phenomenon. Normally, the deflectors would be able to obviously deflect these rocks. However, the rocks that strike the transports seem to go right through the thing. They don't cause the ships to drop out of warp, but there are several hull breaches that result from it.
Can we send repair crews or emergency repair crews?
The ones on the transports are doing their best job. If you wanted to be like extra safe, you could. But
We'd
basically,
have to drop out of warp to transport.
Yeah, it's also a thing where you'd be transporting at warp, and there would be definitely a task involved there. However, what I did want to say here at this point is, the remaining rocks of the meteor storm are very curiously beginning to almost arc and head back towards the convoy yet again.
Okay. Right. That's not good.
Captain, I suggest we take defensive action against these this debris. This is clearly not a naturally forming phenomenon, and we are being targeted somehow.
Agreed. I don't want to drop out of warp, but I think now would be the best time to do so. We can fight better and we can maneuver better at impulse.
So before you make that call, Shatsu says, Sir, I believe that if we push our engines a little bit harder, we might be able to simply outrun the rocks.
Will the transports be able to keep up with that speed?
I believe so, yes. Just as long as we don't maintain such speeds for several hours.
Do we know how they're homing in?
You do not at this point.
Is it possible for us to use a tractor beam or a beam of some kind to reinforce the structural integrity of the damaged transports while we're at this higher warp?
I'm going to say no, simply because that would mean disrupting their warp bubble, so probably not.
What if we merged warp bubbles with them, got close enough to?
That would involve a daring plus con task, but you could do it.
Orders,
You can
Captain?
Let's try outrunning.
Captain, we could also try
Understood.
separating into different groups and seeing if the rocks follow one group or if they divide.
We're already single file, Lieutenant. Very difficult for extra maneuverability in this at this time.
But
And
it will have to. One of the ships could drop out of warp for a second, say the Alexandra, which could hold its own in a fight, and that would tell us more if the rocks are targeting the transports or the ships.
I would much rather that the group stay together rather than risk a split up, even if it's just for a couple minutes. We're to see these transports through, and by golly, I intend to do it. Yeah, so let's try. Everyone, just try a micro warp burst jump to push the engines a bit for 5 minutes and see if that's enough, and we'll go from there.
Okay. So instead of rolling individually for each transport, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to let each of the sections of the Ophion roll me a daring plus con, assisted by the ship's engines plus con, at a difficulty of 3. And we'll say that if you don't have a specific NPC in your section for that has stats, your roll would be under a 13.
Okay.
So I believe Sona is in section 1. So Captain, if you want to roll for Sona,
I can roll her.
I don't think there's a sheet for my pilot guy, so should I just roll 10?
I would say if Tins is at a 13, go ahead and roll Tins, but it would be assumed that you would have someone competent at the helm.
And you said control plus con?
Daring plus con.
Daring plus con.
Difficulty of 3, right?
Difficulty of 3, but it is assisted by the ship's engines plus con. Okay, so that's 1 success so far. Go ahead and roll for the ship as well. You got the 3 you needed. So beta section, along with 3 of the transports, is able to eke ahead a little bit and presumably out of trouble. Sona does a phenomenal job as per usual, but let's see if the Ophion section 1, the Alpha section, can keep up.
Doing that right now. Those engines.
It can indeed. So another 3 transports get through without any issue. And finally we come to Gamma section.
Helm operation would be an applicable focus?
It would indeed.
Sweet.
All right.
Go.
Now feel free to take momentum if you need it.
Okay. I think we are at a 3.
Yeah, you're at 3, as far as I know.
Okay. Can I roll a momentum, knowing now that I only got one, post the original roll?
I would say you could do so for the ship.
Okay.
And that's probably not rules as written, but we're just going to go with it.
Sounds good to me. So let me get the ship. And the ship is engines plus con.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And no applicable focus.
Okay. So, Gamma section, unless you have determination available to re-roll this.
I don't believe. Oh, I lost my sheet. Let's see. And determination is based off of values, correct?
Correct.
I have not losing another one under the worst conditions. Serving Starfleet is family tradition, and hesitation is as bad as inaction.
I'd allow the first two to apply here.
Okay. So I will use. But that's under me. Or would it be determination under Lotus?
Usually it's supposed to be under Lotus, but given the nature of this task, I'm gonna say that since you're in command, I'll allow you to use your determination in place of hers.
Okay, so I'll use my determination and then re-roll her daring plus con, correct?
Correct. And if you want to spend your momentum, this would probably be the chance to do it.
That sounds like a plan to me. So, daring con.
Okay.
So I have a total of 3. Oh no.
Yeah, because you had to re-roll completely. Yeah. Okay. So here's what's gonna happen. The last transport and the gamma section of the Ophion are able to get through this area no problem. However, the Kodiak, as it pulls up the rear as a caboose, it is struck by these rocks, and all of you would begin to receive reports that the Kodiak has suffered some fairly moderate damage to its engines and will need to drop out of warp for repairs. The good news is that the rock's meteor storms, as it kind of bombards the Kodiak, they are able to determine that the meteors all seem to have the strange energy signatures about them. More specifically, it's carrying a Solanogen signature, which would be similar in nature to the mines or other small little installations that are causing the Tetryon effect in the first place.
All right.
Captain, I volunteer to stay behind with the Kodiak as they effect repairs.
How badly damaged is the Kodiak?
The Kodiak reports that it estimates a total of 6 hours repair.
6 hours repair. What is their weapons and shields capability at the moment?
So I'll say this out of character, just so you know. Obviously, them as a steam runner, they are very well equipped to defend themselves, but they have, just again without giving you straight numbers, they have a rather large and impressive phaser array. They have photon torpedoes, and they have tri-cobalt torpedoes. Ooh. So they are fairly confident they can defend themselves.
All right. In which case, I'll deny Pinek's request. The USS Kodiak claims that they can still fend for themselves, and I've seen them I've heard of tales of them in action, and I believe them. Our primary mission is with the Convoy.
Okay. So, interestingly, you guys will actually come to the end of the session. You guys actually were able to evade something I had planned, which is interesting. I certainly allow it. So to kind of wrap things up and to lead us towards a conclusion, you all are able to make the quote-unquote break to the Sabine Expanse with all 7 transports more or less intact. The Kodiak will catch up after about a day, and will report that they detected some rather strange tachyon emissions, but that they were not approached by any Klingons or any Romulans. It was one of those things where they either got lucky or there just wasn't anybody out there. However, since they did have the time to do so, they were able to pinpoint that the minefield, as well as the meteor storm, was likely of Romulan origin. But yeah, again, the general idea is that you all have arrived supposedly in the clear at this point, and will be able to proceed on to the Icarus sector. So as I said, that's kind of the end of my prepared material. But I did want to open up, as usual, for any kind of last minute or otherwise sorts bits of RP that you guys want to get done as your characters for this mission.
Are we still in MVA or have we reconfigured?
That is a good question. Have you, or have you remained separate?
I think once we've reached the end of the corridor, I think it's safe for. Well, I don't know.
Well, I would suggest that being we have done this for what did you say, 9 days?
Well, 15 days at this point, but yes.
Okay, 15 days. That it would be my recommendation that we get all 3 crews back together as one crew and let people start taking extended times off shift, not ship.
Yeah.
To avoid people being burned out.
Yeah.
Because we've just spent 15 days of running our one crew as effectively 3 crews with 2 shifts.
And I imagine not everyone has their quarters in the ship the part of the ship they were assigned to.
Mm-hmm.
True.
I would imagine that as well.
All right. Yeah. Recombine the ship. We'll proceed at a slower speed. We may extend a 2-day trip into a 3-day trip, but I think for morale purposes that would be better.
Okay. So yeah, the ship remerges into one. I'm just going to give it to you. I'm not going to require a roll for this. The Ophion combines back into one singular vessel. And yeah, you guys have the run of the ship.
I'll meet with Captain in his ready room when I come back aboard.
Okay.
All right.
Before we come back together, or as we are in the middle of putting the ships back together, I will tell the Section 3 crew, I will give them all attaboys, and with a big smile and across the communications, beers on the old man today.
Okay. They are very happy to hear this news. Morale +1, as it were.
I'll deliver my standard XO reports to the captain, and then I'll kind of, informally say to him, the Romulans seem particularly intent on stopping us. Wouldn't you say, Captain?
I'm in agreement. I suspect that the Tal Shiar base might have been an attempt for them to expand their interests in the Sabine Expanse as well. We're just being a little more obvious than they are about it.
I'd like to, in the middle of their conversation, actually come into the captain's
Ready room?
quarters as well.
Okay, so we'll say that Panek and Skull, you hear a chime at
right.
Skull's door.
All right, I just hold up my finger briefly to Panek and go, "Come in."
I'll walk in. Excuse me, sir. XO.
Mr. Beckett.
I'll nod.
Wonderful job as a temporary commander for the last 15 days.
That was part of the reason I wanted to come up here. I was hoping that both of you were together. I figured you'd want to kind of talk to the all 3 of us. I kind of had a thought on my way up here. I don't want to say that those rocks were sent by the Klingons. That doesn't sound like something they would do.
No. From my reports that the Kodiak sent when she rejoined, the rocks the rocks and the mines definitely all seemed to be Romulan in origin.
Well, that does sound like something they would do.
Precisely.
Maybe it's something that I know this is all kind of a tense agreement between the three of us, Romulans, Klingons, and the Federation, but maybe it's something we should tip the Klingons off to, that the Romulans are doing.
In an attempt to rebalance the distribution of information in the DMZ.
Correct.
Agreed. And the Klingons are still our allies. The Khidmer Accords are still strong, if I recall correctly. And I believe such agreements require a sharing of military data that affects both Federation and Klingon interests. And I believe that this Romulan activity constitutes such a threat.
Beckett will nod, and as do I. That's why I wanted to bring it up. That I feel that it would behoove us to keep good communications with the Klingons.
Agreed. It's a shame that blood wine wasn't real. It would have gone a long way to helping negotiations with them.
What turned me off, or turned me on to something was awry, was they said that they were bringing us 2319s, which is one of the best vintages of blood wine, and that they had crates of it. You're not going to find that outside of Klingon space by the crate.
I find that to be sloppy work of Romulan intelligence. They are usually very detail-oriented.
Yes. Normally when they lie, their lie sounds perfect. That's why
you often trust a Romulan lies more than the Romulan truth.
This is correct. It's part of the reason that I didn't go down there alone or just send a security team. I wanted myself and Sona to go down there and figure out what was going on. The other thing, too, they said was that the person who ordered it was Commander Beckett. They didn't call me Dr. Beckett. They didn't say CMO. They said Commander Beckett. Which, unfortunately for them, I was standing in front of them.
That is true.
I highly doubt that these Romulan infractions will cease just simply because we have left the corridor. We shall have to remain very alert once we enter the Icarus sector.
Agreed. I'll have Mr. Locke run a counter-cyber warfare suite and make sure that the Romulans haven't used those rocks as some sort of delivery technique for something more dangerous.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, if nothing else, those type of attacks are probably going to become more frequent, seeing as how we're not sitting at a Federation space station yet.
I also suggest we perform scans of the transport and Kodiak's hulls, as these debris came in physical contact with them.
Agreed.
If that is all, Captain, I will move off to order so.
That is all, Lieutenant Commander. Mr. Beckett, though, I have one more thing.
I'll nod and say Captain, Commander, and then leave.
XO? Yes, Captain.
So, it's come to my attention that the bottle in your hand that I saw at Ops matched a crate of alcohol that recently showed up at Quark's called Sabine Lager, if I recall correctly.
That is correct, sir.
So, based on your recently displayed alcoholic knowledge, am I to assume that you have some hand in this?
That would be correct, sir. And as you are my commanding officer and my captain, bottles of it are also left in your quarters, on ice, waiting for you at your leisure.
Wonderful. Well, as long as this does not impact your duties, I see no reason to, put an official reprimand on your record for brewing such a libelous substance.
I thank you for that, sir. And no, when I am on duty, I am on duty. When I am off duty, I have hobbies.
So do we all. And this is mine. I'll just show you my finished artwork.
It's a very nice painting. It.
Oh yeah, you weren't here for the session where we landed on 3 planets of separate environmental statuses.
Looks lovely, sir.
Thank you.
Looks like the accountings of the planets that we have visited recently.
Indeed. It's nice to put one's foot on solid ground, not be in space where everything's trying to kill you.
This is true. This is very true.
Well, come by my quarters to see at the end of duty shift. I feel that we should share some of these bottles.
Excellent, sir.
Dismissed.
And I will nod and head out and head back to sickbay.
All right. So that's where we're gonna probably pull back the camera, quote unquote, and end the session. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna end the stream and whatnot, and then we'll chat for a little bit after that. So for those of watching at home, bye bye.